There are people who make love like it's a performance, fiery, intense, dramatic, but not her. She made love like she was whispering, soft, deep, haunting. No moans, no sweet nothings, just silence. The kind of silence that lingers longer than sound ever could. He used to think that closeness required love, but she taught him sometimes. A silent touch says more than 1,000 I love yous. Each night, she gave him everything: her body, her breath, the scent of her skin, the rhythm of her heartbeat. But never her name. He asked once. She just smiled, lips still glistening, and said, barely a breath brushing his neck, "Names are for keeping. I am meant to pass through." And so he stayed for a whole season, making love to a woman without a name. Strangely enough, she became the one he could never forget. He'd slept with many women, all kinds. Some called out his name, some clutched his hand tightly, some cried, some didn't touch him at all except with their bodies. But none of them ever made him feel stripped bare from the inside, like she did. That night, Savannah was quiet, like a town hiding a body deep in the woods. Marcus pulled up to the Cypress Inn, where the red neon flickered like Morse code for the lost. He didn't need luxury, just a place with no ex-wife calling, no work emails, no wedding photo hanging on the wall. Room 8, iron bed, sagging mattress, peeling paint on the walls, the kind of place no one stays long in. He took off his shirt, poured a shot of bourbon from his metal flask, and sat on the edge of the bed. The dim yellow lamp lit his arm where a wedding ring had lived for 12 years. Now, just a pale band of skin remained, a silent reminder. Then came the knock. 3 taps, soft, steady, as if whoever was outside wasn't asking for anything, just waiting to be let in. Once. He opened the door. She was standing there. No smile, no hello, no name. Just eyes the color of midnight, lips swollen like they'd just sipped something strong, and a body that moved like wet silk. The red dress clung to her not to show off, but to hold something in. On her left wrist, a bracelet made of old wooden beads. Could have been a keepsake, a charm, or nothing at all, but it stopped Marcus from turning away. She stepped inside, slow, unhurried, like she'd already been there in someone else's dream. No words, just the sound of her heels on the worn wooden floor, the wind slipping through the window crack, and his breath for the first time in months not heavy with exhaustion. She sat on the edge of the bed, looked up at him, not challenging, not inviting, just the gaze of a woman who knew her body could save or destroy a man, depending on how he touched it. Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but she raised a finger to his lips, not gentle, not harsh, just enough. Then she took his hand, placed it on her hip, warm, smooth skin, and suddenly he felt like a child reaching for a door he'd never dared open. They didn't make love like 2 lonely people. They didn't even make love. They confessed in silence, one touch at a time. No rush, no act, no moans, no performance. Just flesh to flesh, heartbeat syncing with the old wall clock as if time itself was listening. When he came close to release, she didn't change rhythm. She just held his hand, looked at him, not with her eyes, but with a sorrow behind them, a sadness without a name. Afterward, she turned away, facing the wall, on her neck a small mole, right at the spot where, if he kissed it, it might make her remember something long buried. Marcus reached out, touched her shoulder, and finally spoke. "What's your name?" She turned her head. The bedside lamp caught her eyes, and in them he saw himself naked, tired, and alive. She whispered, voice raspy, like breath after tears, "If you need to know my name, then don't remember me." Then she stood, no kiss, no glance back. She picked up her shoes, opened the door, and vanished into the night like a wound just stitched, still raw beneath the skin. Marcus lay there, her scent still on the pillow, his chest rising not from lust, but from the weight of being seen by someone without a name. Most people think that after you sleep with someone whose name you never knew, the feeling disappears like smoke from a cigarette. A faint trace of sweetness, a little ash, then nothing. But Marcus didn't feel that way. He drove off the next morning, just like he'd planned, but the passenger seat felt heavier, as if someone was still sitting there, feet up on the dash, hair falling loose, touching nothing but somehow sending electric currents through his chest. The rest of the day played out as usual, but none of it meant anything anymore. He had dinner, but couldn't remember what he ordered. He turned on the TV but saw only the shape of her back, reflected in the dark screen. He stepped into the shower and caught himself wondering if she had been here. Would she have washed away the part of herself she left on his skin? Marcus had lived most of his life like a decent man. No tattoos, no flings, no affairs. And maybe that's exactly why he always felt something missing, not someone beside him, but a part of himself he'd never dared admit he truly longed for. A week later, he went back. No call ahead, no plan. He just knew that those dark eyes had made every courtroom victory feel embarrassingly small. The Cypress Inn hadn't changed. The red neon still blinked like an old curse, waiting to be broken. Room 8 still smelled of damp wood. The sheets were new, but the left pillow still had a dip in it like someone had once laid there, turned slightly to the side. Marcus showered, shaved, didn't pour a drink, just sat and waited. Then came the knock, 3 times, just like before. He opened the door slowly. She was there, still nameless, still silent. But this time she smiled. Not a seductive smile, not the smile of a woman who knows she's beautiful, but a smile of someone who had seen him, not just the man, but the quiet soul he'd spent a lifetime hiding. They didn't speak, just looked at each other, and this time, the gaze wasn't filled with curiosity. It was a reunion no one had dared plan. She took off her dress, folded it carefully over the chair, like someone who'd done this 100 times. No shyness, no performance. Marcus stayed seated, and for the first time, he didn't want to reach out. He just wanted to look. Her body felt like a prayer made of skin, not begging, not promising, just existing. He reached for her wrist, tracing the old wooden bracelet. "This bracelet, who gave it to you?" She looked up, her eyes never leaving his, and answered in a voice so low, it felt like it came from somewhere deeper than memory. "The only person who ever knew my name, and the only one who forgot it after a single night." They got into bed, slowly, not like that first night willed, unfamiliar, but like they were rewriting a forgotten verse tucked between the pages of an old Bible. Her hand found his chest right at the pale spot where his wedding ring used to rest. She leaned down, didn't kiss, just placed her lips there, like she was returning a piece of his heart someone else had stolen. After they made love, not frantic, not messy, but like fire melting into water. Marcus stayed still. She turned away again, but this time, she moved closer, her back against his chest, her leg resting gently over his, and her breath told his whole body, "Don't leave." He didn't ask her name again. He just whispered, "You cold." She didn't answer with words. She took his hand and placed it over her belly. That sacred place a woman only lets you touch if she believes you're not here to take, but to hold. Their second night, same room, same silence. But this time, the silence had begun to take shape. Marcus returned to room 8 like it was a habit, or maybe a ritual. No one texted him, no one called, no one told him to go. But every Friday night, he drove that rusted old Buick back to Savannah. And she was always there, always the one to knock first. She never asked about his life, never demanded explanations, but somehow, her silence made him feel safer than any promise ever could. And then on a June night, thick as a secret never spoken, he finally said it out loud. "My wife used to be everything." He lay on the bed, bare back to the ceiling stained with mold. She was beside him, quiet. "I married her before I even knew who I was. Did everything right, college, job, house, kids. But at some point, I realized I'd never actually lived. I was performing, playing the role of a good man." She said nothing, just turned toward him, laid one hand gently on his collarbone as if to say, "Go on, I'm listening with all of me." I loved her. But I didn't know how to love myself, and when it all fell apart, I didn't cry, I just went quiet. Like now. She sat up, slipped her red dress back on, not because she planned to leave, but because when a man starts unraveling, he deserves to be met by a woman who's not standing naked in front of him. Marcus let out a soft laugh, like pain melting in his throat. "You know, I used to think sex was the solution, but with you, sex feels more like a question I've never been brave enough to answer." She walked over, sat at the foot of the bed, took his hand, not like a lover, but like a lost soul reaching for a guide. "Do you know why men sleep with strangers so easily?" It was the first time she'd ever asked him anything. Her voice rough, slightly tired, like the question came not from her mind, but from somewhere between her chest and stomach, where loneliness tends to sleep the longest. Marcus looked at her, didn't answer, waited. She continued. "Because strangers don't expect them to be perfect. They don't know how they've failed before. Strangers don't carry their past, only their present." She paused, then added, "And sometimes, the present is the only thing a man has left to give." Marcus froze. That sentence didn't stab his heart. It flowed into it. After that night, he started bringing things to the room. An old book, a purple tie. She folded them neatly, placed them on the table. Never kept them, never gave them back, just folded. One evening, he asked, "Do you ever keep anything?" She smiled, so softly, like someone smiling at a scar that healed the wrong way. "I keep what no one sees, the things men leave behind when they think they're only staying for one night." Marcus looked at her, and for the first time, he wanted to touch her not out of desire, but out of fear, that if he didn't, he might disappear into a silence so beautiful it could make a man forget himself. He embraced her, not tightly, just held her. And in that moment, he thought, if this is love, then maybe I've been loving wrong all these years. Their third night, no different than the two before. But Marcus was no longer the man who came to the motel looking for a night to run away. He was now the man who had told her everything, and still didn't know her name. Some women walk into a man's life like an answer. But her, she was a question, one without a mark, one that never ended. 3 months, once a week, same room, same bed, same silence, so sensual it made it hard to breathe. Marcus wasn't sure anymore if he kept coming back to the Cypress Inn for sex, or because her presence made him feel like someone still saw him. She never initiated, never asked for anything. She just was. She touched, loved, breathed, and left, like smoke that knew its way home. One Monday morning, Marcus woke in his own bed. Her scent was still clinging to the collar of his sleep shirt. He walked into the bathroom, looked at himself in the mirror, and whispered, was she even real, or just a beautiful hallucination I needed to believe in? He called the front desk at the Cypress Inn. No one answered. So he drove over, not on a Friday, not on schedule, just to make sure the place still existed. The red neon was still blinking, but when he asked about the woman who always came with him, the old receptionist frowned. "Sir, I don't recall anyone ever coming in with you. You always came alone." Marcus froze. "You sure?" "I'm not blind, and I don't sleep on the job. I see every guest, clear as day." He left, heart pounding like it was trying to escape his chest. A cold fear climbed up his spine. If she wasn't real, then who was it that placed her hand on his heart every single night? The following week, Marcus hired someone he knew, a retired cop, now a private eye. "I just want to know who she is." Marcus told him, "She never gave me her name, no socials, no address, nothing, but she's real. I know she is." The man agreed. 3 nights later, Marcus received a text. No one entered, no one left, just you. That night, Marcus returned to room 8. Door unlocked, waiting. No knock came. He lay on the bed, cold mattress, hard pillow, no curve in the sheets, no lingering scent of skin. He buried his face into the pillow, and for the first time, He wept. From the next room, he heard a soft creak, bare feet on old wood, then the click of the door lock. She walked in. No red dress, just a thin towel wrapped around her, hair wet like she had come back from somewhere not of this world. "I told you already. Marcus." She stepped closer, touched his hand, cold like smoke, yet somehow his heart burned again. "I don't belong to the world of names. I don't live on the internet. I only appear when someone needs to remember who they really are." He said nothing, just pulled her into him, held her the way a drowning man clutches the shore. Not to ask, just to know she was still here. And in the glow of the dim bedside lamp, he saw it. Her shadow on the wall, but no face, just her back, and those eyes like night itself had learned how to speak. That night, she made love to him as if it were the last time, soft, lingering, no urgency, like a symphony without rhythm, without chorus, just one long, aching note stretched to the edge of breath. By morning, she was gone. On the pillow, her old wooden bracelet and a folded piece of paper, handwritten. "You were the first to touch me, without needing to know my name. Thank you for letting me exist, even if only in silence." Marcus folded the note, held the bracelet to his chest, and understood. Some women do not belong to the world of names. They belong to a place where silence speaks, and the body is a memoir never written, never shelved, but felt forever. One day, Marcus decided to clean out his old house. People often do that when they feel they're about to start over, or when they know it's time to say goodbye to something that can't be saved anymore. He gathered old clothes, wedding photos, divorce papers, and suddenly his hand brushed against the wooden bracelet, the only thing left of her. Marcus clenched it in his palm, like a little boy holding on to his mother's keepsake after the funeral. That night, he drove back to Savannah, not to find her, but to say goodbye to the part of himself he once lost. The Cypress Inn was still the same color, same doors, but somehow everything felt smaller now, like memories stepping backward. Room 8 still smelled of damp wood, but this time, Marcus felt at peace. He didn't wait for a knock, didn't expect to see her. He simply turned on the lamp, sat down on the bed, and spoke aloud to no one. "You don't have to come back. I won't go looking anymore. I've found myself, and that's enough." Then a knock. Not 3, just one. Slow, very slow, like someone had traveled a long way just to get that rhythm right. Marcus opened the door. She stood there. No red dress, no towel, just a simple woman, no makeup, hair down, and no need for light to leave him breathless. "I came to return the last thing I still had of you," she said. She stepped inside, sat at the edge of the bed, her hands trembling slightly. For the first time, she looked afraid. Marcus sat beside her, didn't touch, just waited. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper creased in thirds, edges worn. She placed it in his hand. He opened it. The handwriting was slanted, soft but firm. Celeste Naomi Rainey, that's my name, but you loved me before you ever knew it. Marcus held the paper tight, not from shock, but because, as he read her name, her eyes closed, as if she had just offered up something sacred. Why now, he asked. She pressed her lips together, took a deep breath. Because this is the last night. Where are you going? I'm not going anywhere. I'll stay in your memory. But I'm no longer the woman you met in a motel room. I'm real, and real women don't belong in places built for pretend. They made love slow, each touch like reading a handwritten psalm. They didn't seek climax. They sought release. She cried for the first time in all those months, not from pain, not from sorrow, but because for once she was allowed to have a name in someone's memory and not have to run from it. When Marcus woke, the sun was just beginning to rise. Golden streaks of light filtered through the curtains and painted the white bed sheets. She was gone. But on the pillow, a black leather notebook. Inside, dozens of pages, notes, thoughts, poems, and things he'd said, all written in her hand. On the last page, when you knew my name, I was no longer a ghost. I was the woman you once held, and now, the woman you once lost. Marcus never returned to the Cypress Inn. He took the notebook home, placed it on his desk, and every morning, before heading to work, he touched it, like a man touching the forehead of a love he can no longer kiss. And he began to write a novel, Whispers Beneath Beauty, dedicated to the woman with no name, the one who taught him. Love doesn't need a name to become the thing you never forget. After that final night, Marcus never looked for her again, not because he had forgotten, but because he had finally learned how to remember her the right way. He returned to Atlanta, still drove, still worked, still handled divorces, custody battles, asset splits. But he was no longer the same Marcus Bell. On his desk sat a small wooden bracelet, the only thing he allowed himself to keep from a life that had no name. And each time his fingers brushed across it, Marcus would feel there was once a woman who had loved him by not tying him to anything except himself. His ex-wife once asked, "You don't go quiet like you used to. Why's that?" Marcus just smiled. He didn't answer. Because how do you explain that it was a nameless woman who had taught you how to be silent in the right places and how to speak when it truly mattered? He began to write, not about her, but about what it felt like to be with someone who made you feel safe enough to show the worst parts of yourself without shame. His first book was titled Whispers Beneath Beauty. It didn't sell well, but everyone who finished it said they felt like they had just remembered something long forgotten that once touched them deeply. One afternoon, while walking through a small square near his home, Marcus noticed a woman. No red dress, no smoky eyes, just a slender figure, standing in a bookstore, flipping through a novel. He walked closer. She was holding Whispers Beneath Beauty, flipping open the first page, reading the dedication, "For the woman who gave me her body, without ever needing me to say her name." She looked up. It wasn't Celeste. but in her eyes there was something still, familiar. She asked, "You wrote this?" Marcus nodded. "Is it real?" He smiled. "No one really knows, but I never forgot." That night, back home, Marcus opened the old leather notebook. On the final page, beneath her handwriting, he added one more line. She left no address, no promise, but she left something every broken, middle-aged man secretly longs for. The first time he ever touched himself, without disgust. Some people enter our lives not to stay, not to love, but to awaken the parts we buried too deep with one touch, one breath, and one whispered name in the middle of the night. Celeste Naomi Rainey. He never said her name out loud. But every time he wrote, every time he looked at someone with love in his eyes, her name lived again, and that was the end. No one ever knew who she was. No one was sure she had ever really existed. But what she left behind was enough for a man to rebuild his entire life with a love that never needed a label. Thank you for giving your precious minutes in a world that never stops rushing to listen to a story as gentle as breath, but deep enough to linger in your heart for a long, long time. If somewhere in these words, in a look, a touch, or the silence between two people, something reached you, maybe an old memory, an unnamed sadness, or simply a moment when you once loved someone without needing to know who they really were, then I hope you'll take just 1 second to hit subscribe to Tales of Black and turn on notifications so you won't miss the stories that just might help you remember yourself in the softest way possible. Don't forget to like, comment with your feelings below, and share this video with someone who might need a quiet whisper in the dark. Because sometimes, what we need most isn't a name, but someone willing to listen to the story we never quite dared to tell all the way through.